Look at my house now. The water took everything. The bed, fridge, everything. We're homeless now.
More than 1 million people were affected by 2 tropical storms that slammed into Mexico last weekend. Worst hit was the Pacific state of Guerrero, where more than 40 people have died. In some areas, 2 months' worth of rain fell in just 2 days. Thousands have been forced to seek refuge in Acapulco. Here people wait for the water to recede and the mudslides to be cleared, wondering what awaits them when they return home. But the government has a perhaps more pressing job to take care of first. 40,000 tourists have been trapped in Acapulco since the storms hit. Many say that they've been here waiting in line for a flight for more than 3 days. They're hot, they're tired, and they've had enough.
A torrential 3-day downpour has flooded Acapulco airport, causing chaos and stranding some of the 40,000 tourists visiting Mexico's famous beach resort. Eventually, when the rains eased, some flights were able to take off. Those getting away were leaving behind them hotels where food was in short supply and had to be rationed, and cash machines failed to work due to power cuts. For locals, the suffering continued with long queues at supermarkets which had mainly empty shelves due to prior panic buying. Thousands of people have had to seek safety in temporary shelters after homes were swept away or buried beneath landslides. Mexico has been battered by heavy rains and strong winds due to being hit from 2 sides by converging weather systems. At least 55 people have died. The government has now ordered a house-by-house census to account for everyone.
Very difficult situation. There are thousands of tourists still trapped in Acapulco, but not just the tourists. Obviously, there are many more remote communities up in the hillsides of states like Guerrero and Michoacán, where we really don't know what the full scenario is up there. And of course, that's just one side of the double-headed sort of situation that's going on with Mexico at the moment. The storm that's battering the Pacific side of the country, Manuel, has caused this situation in Acapulco, but on the eastern coast, the Hurricane Ingrid has hit, and that's causing similar problems over there. So it's a very difficult picture at the moment. A lot of Mexicans are very good at sort of dealing with these situations because they've been through them before. But that said, this is the worst situation with 2 tropical storms hitting at the same time since the late 1950s. So it's been the worst kind of severe weather for decades, really. And I think the authorities, while doing what they can and trying to rise to the occasion, are just struggling with the sheer size of everything, really. So the fear is that as these more remote communities are reached, that the number of dead may rise in the coming days.
You know, the problem is that we are not tired. The problem is that there's no way to help the people. We are collecting clothes, we are collecting food, we are collecting water, but the streets, there's no way to get the people. And it's raining again. Today was a sunny day, but today it's raining again, so it's going to be difficult to get the people again. The water is going up again.
Tropical storm Manuel brought heavy rains, flooding, and landslides to the beach resort of Acapulco on the western shores of Mexico. The Sabana River overflowed its banks and threatened homes after the intense rainfall. 6 people were killed when their SUV lost control on a rain-swept highway as they headed back to their resort. At least 21 have died from Manuel and Ingrid. Manuel had maximum sustained winds of about 35 miles per hour. Authorities said the rains would present a dangerous threat in the mountains where flash floods and mudslides were possible. Ingrid had winds of 75 miles per hour, forcing officials to issue hurricane warnings in Cabo Rojo and La Pesca.
Acapulco is known for its beaches, but the city's blue seas and yellow sand have been replaced by rivers of mud. The tropical storm Manuel hit the Mexican state of Guerrero on Monday. Since then, the battle to reach safe ground has been arduous. Despite rescue efforts, some never made it. There's so much water that residents can now use jet skis to drive down their streets. The main routes out of Acapulco are flooded. The airport's terminals are deserted. Tourists are now desperate to escape the city they once flocked to. Around 40,000 were left stranded.
It's a little tired, but trying to get home as best as possible.
Mexico's military intervened, sending planes to help get them to the country's capital. Dams along the western Pacific coast are no match for the aggressive rains and swollen rivers.
Praise the Lord, prophet of the Lord.
Amen. Praise the Lord, Pastor Joanne. Now, the Lord has spoken with me. The Lord has spoken with me on this day. And on this day, the Lord has spoken with me regarding severe distress that is coming upon the face of the earth. Again, in this conversation, the Lord, the God of heaven, the God of righteousness, Jehovah Sidkenu, he has spoken with me about distress that is coming in the events that demarcate, the events that mark the coming of the Messiah. And in this conversation, the Lord, he took me to the land of Mexico and parts of Latin America. And in Mexico and the other parts of Latin America, the Lord showed me a pastor in the land of Mexico. In the land of Mexico, he showed me a pastor. And the Lord had taken me there to announce the coming of the Messiah and also to rebuke sin. And that means to prepare the way for the coming of the Lord. And then this pastor, I see him making a grievous mistake as I was sitting there. And I see a slide like a big screen in the church. And it shows on the screen a false prophet. And while the Lord had put me there, the Lord took me there and I saw him showing on the screen a false prophet and telling the church he makes a grievous mistake by trying to equalize the mighty servant of the Lord with the false prophets of this world. And he says, look, that prophet is rebuking sin. And then he says, look, he is also like another prophet here. And then I saw the wrath of God. And the Lord spoke by voice and said, how dare you equate my servant with the false prophets of this world? And then I saw the tremendous wrath of God agitated from heaven. And then the Lord took me to a second place in that nation of Mexico. And I don't know whether it was in that church, but still in that nation of Mexico. And I saw the sacrificing of a dog. They sacrificed a dog. After they slaughtered the dog, I see them going and pushing their hands into the dog, the parts of the dog, and removing things, and it's sacrifice. And I see the feet of the dog that has been sacrificed in that land and in that church. In that church, I see the sacrificing of a dog. After they slaughter the dog, slaughter it open, they see them now taking their hands and touching some parts of the dog, including the private parts of the dog in that sacrifice. It was a most abhorrible sight to behold. And then after that, the Lord showed me the second sacrifice they make is that of a cock. So they slaughter the cock and render it open again, and so they were sacrificing to Satan church. And then after that, I saw, when I looked up, I saw that the wrath of God was agitated 7 times higher. And then after that, immediately I saw floods coming into the land of Mexico. And the floods came and came and came, and then they became tremendous floods that entered their homes, entered their houses, and tremendous floods entered their homes and their streets and their cities and their villages, and a lot of people were swept by the floods. And I saw the Lord shake the chairs and everything violently, and all the chairs in the church were damaged and broken in small pieces, and the flood swept the people. I saw them dying, a lot of people dying. Apparently, there are nations that are still, according to this vision of the Lord, that are still groping in darkness. They have not yet known that there is one overruling voice across the face of the earth, overriding and overruling. That there is no other voice right now across the face of the earth that is dispensing the message of Jehovah, Jehovah Elohim, Jehovah Elohim, Jehovah El Shaddai, Jehovah Rohi, Sabaoth, Hoseinu, Eloheka, Eloheinu. There is no other voice right now across the entire face of the earth, even in heaven, that is right now directing the nations and shepherding the nations back to the highway of holiness, that they may prepare the way for the coming of the Messiah, the King of kings and the Lord of lords. He is the Messiah. He is the one that redeemed us from the cross. There is no other. How dare Mexico worship another? Now I've seen a great distress. They will weep, they will run, they will die in their largest numbers. They have dared equal the mighty servants of the Lord, the voice of the Lord of this hour, with the false prophets of this world. I've seen the tremendous wrathful hand of God touch that land. How dare them? When will Mexico understand? I have punished thee, I have suffered thee, and yet you have not yet returned to me. Mexico, now I see floods. I don't know where to come from. Probably the ocean will come out and vomit on the land. I see floods.
Manuel and Ingrid. Rare major storms hitting Mexico simultaneously from 2 separate ends. Hurricane Ingrid brought rainfall and landslides to the northern Gulf Coast, while Tropical Storm Manuel flooded much of the Pacific coast. Dozens of lives were lost. Thousands of homes were destroyed or damaged.
We are waiting for boats to come to take us across. We've been waiting since last night, and there is no sign of help from the authorities.
A state of emergency is in place as heavy rains are still hampering rescue work. 20 highways and a dozen bridges were also badly damaged. Major roads have been blocked and air traffic has been disrupted.
Provoked by 2 simultaneous meteorological events, one on the Pacific and the other in Atlantic Ocean. Up to the moment, it has affected more than 2/3 of national territory. Practically, there has been 3 states not affected.
The states of Guerrero, Michoacan, Acapulco, Veracruz and Oaxaca have been worst hit. State authorities say they are providing food and shelter as best as they can. But for more than 3 dozen people, man-made defences were no match for the extreme weather phenomena. As some grieve the deaths of their loved ones, dozens are still missing. Warnings of flash floods and landslides are still in place. The government fears the death toll may rise as more cases of drownings and accidents come in. Osama bin Javed, Al Jazeera.
Queremos